I want to start by asking you a question. Why are you here? Some of you may be here because your spouse or your parents made you come. You'd rather be doing something else, but you're here nonetheless because you were forced to be. Some of you may be here because this is where you know you need to be. You're not exactly engaged, but you're here because maybe you think that it's checklist Christianity and I can mark this off my list of things that I need to do on Sunday. Some of you may be here because you want to get better and you want to be stronger. If you're here for that reason, then let me assure you we're going to work on that through this new series. If you're not here for that reason, then I hope to encourage you to want to be here for that reason and want to work harder to be stronger in Christ. In his book, Fuzzy Memories, Jack Handey tells the story about as a child, he was bullied by this neighborhood big kid, and every day he would take his lunch money from him. And so Jack decided that he was going to do something about it, and he was going to take karate lessons to hopefully defend himself and to salvage some pride. The karate lessons, though, were $5 a lesson, and he soon realized he couldn't afford that, and he figured it was just cheaper to pay the bully. And I'm afraid that there are some Christians who feel that it's cheaper just to pay the bully. In order to understand how to be stronger, you need to understand that there is an enemy, and he has his weapons of mass destruction pointed directly at you. Now, you can ignore this fact. You can be rather apathetic about this fact, but it's still a fact. And ultimately, if you don't get aware and keen on what he is doing, you will be destroyed spiritually in the end. We don't take our enemy that seriously, I'm afraid. We've painted him out to be some cute little cartoon character. He's a caricature with a red suit and a pitchfork and horns, and he's printed on T-shirts and is almost this adorable little figure, and somehow it's cool to be naughty nowadays. Think of our sports teams, like them or not, the Sun Devils, the Blue Devils, the Red Devils. You know, it only reiterates the fact that our devil is to be either cheered for or against, but not to be fought or feared. We have this idea that the devil is not really something that we need to worry about, but rather just a figure or a symbol of evil. During the Vietnam War, one of the most difficult things was discerning who the enemy actually was. The enemy didn't fight fair, so to speak. The enemy didn't always wear a uniform or have any distinctive marks. And so one soldier said that it was common to go up to someone and say, "Are you the enemy?" And if they said yes, then you shoot them. It's hard to know sometimes who the enemy is, but unfortunately, many of us don't know and we choose not to know. We're rather unconcerned about it. But if we're going to win this fight of our lives, and we'd better understand who the enemy is, and we'd better be well aware that he is attacking us and that he is aiming his weapons directly at us, that we are in his crosshairs. According to the Barna Research Institute, it's been discovered that 6 out of 10 Americans believe that Satan is not real, only a symbol of evil, and 47% of Christians feel the same way. Do we grasp the severity of the situation? Do we understand how formidable this enemy is and what his goal is? Paul wrote, "But one whom you forgive anything, I forgive also. For indeed, what I have forgiven, if I have forgiven anything, I did it for your sakes in the presence of Christ, so that no advantage may be taken of us by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes." Are we ignorant of the devil's schemes? Hopefully not, but I think sometimes we are. This is a serious situation. And we need to get serious about fighting the enemy. There is a battle going on, and the Bible makes very clear that there is a spiritual war that is going on around us, and we'd better get involved. 2 Corinthians 10, 3 and 4 reads, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses." 2 Timothy 2, 3 and 4 states, "Suffer hardship with me as a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No soldier in active service entangles himself in the affairs of everyday life so that he may please the one who enlisted him as a soldier." And it's in Ephesians 6 that Paul writes, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. There is an enemy that is attacking everything that we stand for. He is a subtle serpent. He is a master of disguise. He is a roaring lion. He is the father of lies. He is the great dragon. He is the prince of this world. Jesus identified the enemy, and as a Christ follower, we have to do the same. We must be ready to fight. A war is raging, and far too many Christians are unconcerned because they are weak, they are ignorant, or they are unprepared. Sadly, many are unconcerned. But this is a fight for our spiritual lives. Now, it may not seem that vital when you're sitting in the deer stand on Sunday morning when everybody else is worshiping. It may not seem that important when you're standing on the 18th green while your brothers and sisters are at worship, but it is vital. In the end, we will either win or lose. There's no in between. And folks, we can't be Switzerland here. We can't be neutral. You've got to pick a side. And when you became a Christian, when you put on Christ, you enlisted in His army. You can't be a draft dodger. You are in it to win it, or you're not. That's just the plain truth. Hopefully you are all in, because the devil certainly is. He is all in. He is invested in destroying you, and you'd better be as well. You must choose a side. And so over the next several weeks, we're going to look at what it takes to defeat this formidable foe by looking at Ephesians chapter 6, specifically verses 10 through 20. You may know that as the description of the full armor of God. And we're going to look at all of those elements, all those pieces of armor, like the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, those sandals of the gospel of peace, the helmet of salvation, and of course, prayer. We're going to look at all those. First of all, let's look at Ephesians chapter 6, beginning in verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the full armor of God so that you will be able to resist in the evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. Now, understand what is being talked about here. In chapters 1 through 3 of this epistle to the Ephesians, Paul outlines the blessings that come through the gospel. And in chapters 4 through 6, he is seeking to motivate the brethren to live to please God, both in the church and at home, even in the world around them. And so Paul begins wrapping everything up in chapter 6, verses 10 and following with the words, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the full armor of God," he says, "so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil." He goes on to describe what that armor looks like. Think about this. Paul most likely had been chained to a Roman soldier day and night. Now, knowing the character of Paul, don't you think that Paul had some words to say to that soldier he was chained to? I have no doubt he probably tried to preach the gospel to that soldier, don't you? And I have no doubt that he was chained to this soldier, and as he sat there in his prison cell, I think he probably looked that soldier up and down, and he saw all the elements of his armor. And I believe it struck him to say, there's a spiritual application there. Maybe he looked at his belt and saw the sword hanging from it, and he thought about the belt of truth and the sword of the Spirit. Maybe he saw his helmet and thought about the helmet of salvation. I think it's very likely that Paul drew some conclusions by looking at that Roman soldier that he was chained to and making some spiritual application, which is what we're going to do over the next few weeks. These are our weapons: the belt of truth, the shield of faith, the breastplate of righteousness. All of those are our weapons in the fight for our lives. There is one war, and it's a holy war. It's a war on the holiness of God and His children. But while there is one war, there are many fronts on which this war is fought. There are many battlegrounds. There are many places that we confront the enemy. Let's talk about the three most common. Three most common are the home, the church, and the heart. My friends, Satan has his weapons aimed directly at the Christian home because he knows that he can't destroy God, and so he attempts to do the next best thing. and that's to dethrone God from the family, to take him off the throne of our hearts. And one of the primary ways he does that is through family, because family is the fabric of society, of the church. And therefore Satan is going to aim his weapons directly at the family in an effort to break it up, to destroy it, or at the very least, to keep God from being the center point. Joshua took a stand, and we must as well. Remember Joshua's words? Joshua 24 and verse 15. If it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua says, you got to choose. Now, you can serve those other gods if you want to. They won't help you any, but you can serve them. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Why don't you follow my lead? My friends, we need heroes in our families. And God has designed leadership to occur in the home and at church with the male, with the father, with the husband. Leadership in the home and in the church rests squarely on the shoulders of the father, the husband. That is our responsibility. And unfortunately, there are far too many men who are not stepping up to the plate and doing what they need to do to protect their family and to build a mighty fortress around the home. Every home needs a hero. Fathers, we need to be that hero. We need to be a truth defender. We need to be kingdom-focused. We need to be heavenly-minded. We need to be family-oriented. We need to be Bible-driven, and we need to be God-seeking. The pursuit of God is the mark of a real man. Children often get their first impression of God from their fathers, and so therefore, let us be the proper illustration of that. 1 Corinthians 11 and 1, the Apostle Paul wrote, "Be imitators of me, just as I also am of Christ." We cannot be the proper example to our children until we are properly following our Father. We follow our Father, our children follow us, and we have this chain reaction. Hopefully this multi-generational faithfulness, right? Yes, we're going to mess up. As fathers, we're not perfect, and we shouldn't be held to that standard, but we must step up to the plate. We should be expected to be the godly influence in our homes and to take the lead when it comes to those spiritual matters. And if I may be very candid for a moment here, I think we have too many homes in which fathers are just absolute wimps. Their children are ruling the house. Their children are taking control. They're holy terrors because dad won't get out of the recliner. He won't take time off of work or put down his iPad and step up to the plate and do something. He's not the hero that he needs to be, and he's allowing his wife to pull her hair out because she's trying to do both responsibilities, and that's not how God designed it. God expects there to be roles within the household. And unfortunately, there are too many men who are not carrying out their role effectively. Guys, be a man. Shoulder the load you're supposed to carry. Be a godly father and a godly husband, and quit allowing your wife to shoulder all of the load because you won't get up and help, because you won't take the lead. Listen to what is written in Genesis 18 and 19. "For I have chosen him, so that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham what he has spoken about him." It's as if we can hear God saying, just do your job. Perform the job that I have created you to do. Just do that for me. Don't be a coward. If you're a father, be a father. Take the lead. Because if you don't, your family is going to end up losing. A home without a spiritual warrior is like a bus without a driver or an airplane without a pilot. It's going to eventually crash. God has given us that responsibility, and we need to step up. And wives, please let him lead too. I've seen so many situations where ladies will say, yes, you know, my husband, he's the head of the household, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, right. I see the way you interact. He may be the rooster, but you rule the rooster, right? He may be the head, but you're the neck that turns him. Wives, you have a role as well. And many times it's seen as being chauvinistic or oppressive, but that's not how God intended it. When God said that wives therefore submit to your husbands, he's not saying that you are to be a trained dog, but rather you were made from his side to complement him, to complete him. You are a holy alliance. Work together, join forces, and make certain that you're on the same page. Spiritually, when it comes to raising your children, all of those things, you've got to be working together. Paul wrote, "Wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything." So many times I think husbands and wives are engaged in the wrong battle. They spend far too much time fighting each other instead of fighting the true enemy. You got to understand that the devil is winning when this happens. Quit fighting with each other. Set aside your personal preferences and get on the same page. Be that holy alliance. Quit being selfish and work together. You know, I hear a saying all the time, well, if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. That's ridiculous. Why does mama have to be happy before everybody's happy? Put each other on a pedestal, put God first, and work from there. This isn't about your personal happiness. This is about being who God commanded you to be. Both husband and wife have a role. Quit seeking your personal happiness. That's not what this is about. This is about pleasing God and being a holy alliance so that the family can stand firm against the wiles of the devil. On to the next one. The church can also be a battlefield. All too often, churches do the same thing. They spend so much time fighting among themselves that they have forgotten who the real enemy is. This allows the devil to be a spectator and still win. My son is playing tennis now, has been for a little over a year. His personal coach is Brian Fawkes, and Brian was talking to him the other day because what I've noticed in watching him play for the school is that tennis is one of the only sports that I know of where you can do absolutely nothing and win. You realize that? Especially some of the kids that he plays against, they haven't really played tennis. They don't put as much of an emphasis on tennis as the school where he goes to. And so you can stand on one side of the net and the other guy serves every serve into the net and you win. Never had to return a point, never had to return a ball. You just sit there and you win by the other guy messing up. The devil does that sometimes. He sits back and he watches us beat ourselves and he doesn't have to do anything. He sees us fighting among ourselves and tearing ourselves apart, and he's over there going, yeah, this is great. I don't have to do anything. I'm a spectator, and I still win. The battle is not in here, folks. The battle is out there. The battle is with the devil. We don't need more Euodias and Syntyches. We don't need a bunch more Alexanders and Hymenaeuses. We don't need a bunch more Diotrephes. You know who we need? We need more Barnabases. We need more Pauls. We need more Aquilas and Priscillas. We need more Stephens. We need men and women whose major concern is the Lord and His church and His mission, and therefore let's not get distracted. Let's not get caught off guard by fighting among ourselves over things that don't truly matter. Jake has a saying that I like to use, who are we and what are we about? That should be a question we ask of the church all the time and of ourselves individually. Who are we and what are we about? And that applies to anything and everything that we do within the church. Who are we and what are we about? Hopefully we are Christ followers who are concerned about being like Christ and sharing the gospel with others. Anything other than that is secondary. This is who we are and what we are about. And sometimes that identity gets lost because we're too busy fighting among ourselves. We're too busy harping on things that are not eternal. We're not pursuing kingdom things. We're pursuing petty things. And as I've told you before, I've been involved in helping some churches work through conflict, and that conflict is very rarely over doctrine. It's always over power, politics, and personality. Those 3 Ps. That's where churches get off track. Oh, they'll make it about doctrine eventually. That will be their smokescreen, but it's always, it seems, over politics, personality, pettiness, those kind of things. We better be about something better than that. We've got to be about more, because people from the outside looking in are not going to be attracted to our congregation or to the Lord's church when they just see us fighting each other. People want to be a part of a winning team. And when they see that we're winning in our fight against the devil and we're winning souls, then people are going to be attracted to that. Many people are going to want to be a part of that. Nobody wants to be a part of a congregation that's just an extension of the world. Do you? This should never be a place that's a soap opera. This should never be a place that gets caught up in things that are worldly and therefore is not attractive. We should be about something better than that. Who are we and what are we about? What is our focus? Love must win. A love for God and a love for one another. A love for His Word. All those things should be our mark. Jesus said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all men will know that you are disciples of mine if you have love for one another." He doesn't say all of you will know that all will know that you're disciples of mine if you win those fights with each other. That's not what he's talking about. It's about having love for one another. We don't have to be united on opinion, but we do have to be united in love and in truth. We must stand in these two areas, and we must fight for these things. And we cannot spend all of our time and energy devouring one another. We must fight the right enemy in the right battle and with the right weapons. And finally, the last battlefield is the heart. This is the one that's very personal, the one that hits us right between the eyes, so to speak. We'll talk more about this in the next coming weeks as we talk about the breastplate of righteousness, because the idea of a Roman soldier's breastplate was to cover the major vital organs. Righteousness should cover our hearts and protect our hearts. That's our breastplate of righteousness. That should be what protects us. Listen to what James wrote. "Submit therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you." I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I like what James says here, and I've never really thought about it until recently. Submit therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Have you ever thought about the devil fleeing from you? I think the impression that we always get, or the idea that we have in our minds, is that we're just sitting ducks. We're a target, and we just hope that we can make it through the devil testing us or trying to devour us. We just hope we can make it. We hope that we're not his lunch. We hope and pray that we can get through it and that he'll move on and give up on us. Isn't that the impression we usually get? That we just sit and we wait for him to attack and we hope we're strong enough that we can just survive the attack. James talks about making him flee. How do you make him flee? By drawing near to God. Having the most formidable weapon that you could ever have at your disposal on your side. I don't know about you, but I like this concept. Why do we always have to be a sitting target? Why can't we send the devil running? Why can't we be the aggressor? Is there anything wrong with that? Why can't we tell him, you know what, you can come around here if you want, but you better bring an army because we're not putting up with it. This is a mighty fortress that we built around our family, around our church, around our hearts. You're not going to get anywhere here. So bring it. You want to come and fight with us, then we'll do that. Why can't we be the aggressor in the situation? Why can't we be the one that throws the first punch? Why? Why do we have to sit idly by and just hope that we can withstand it? Let's get ourselves stronger so that if he even does come around, and he will, that we can send him on the run. When I was younger, we had a bully in our neighborhood. Big old kid with red hair. He's always bigger than everybody else. He was shaving like when he was 12 years old. And we all knew that he was a formidable foe. You know, nobody messed with this kid. And one day, for some reason, he picked me to be the object of his frustration. I was going to be the victim. And so I was told by the other kids in the neighborhood that this so-called Goliath was coming after me. And so I wondered, what am I going to do, right? I was very small, very skinny. I had no chance. And so I had to come up with a plan. I thought to myself, you know what? I'm probably going to get hurt either way. I might as well make the most of the situation, right? So here he comes walking down the street with this scowl on his face. His eyes were as red as his hair. I mean, he was steaming. I don't know what I did to him, but he was going to take it out on me. And so I decided that when he got to my front yard, I just burst out of the door. I came out of the front door and I went toe-to-toe with him, and I started flailing and just swinging and punching, and I was acting like a madman. I was foaming at the mouth. I was screaming all these other things, and he's sitting there going, what in the world is going on? He's trying to duck my punch. I didn't land a single punch, but I'm flailing. I'm doing everything I can to just make him think that I'm a crazy person, because I felt that was my only hope. I could stand there and let him beat the tar out of me, or I could do something about it. Either way, I was probably going to get hurt. And so here I am flailing, foaming at the mouth, and yelling these things at him. And finally, he just decides, hey, this guy's crazy, I'm leaving. And he walked away, didn't bother me again. Maybe we need to react similarly to the devil. Why do we have to wait for him to come to our front door? Why don't we meet him on the battleground and say, you know what? You've met your match. Not around here. You better go find somebody else because you're not getting a stronghold on this family, on this church, or my heart. Not going to happen. I have built a fortress and I'm going to keep you out at all cost. I have drawn a line in the sand to say, you're not coming any further than this. Are we willing to take that stand? Are we willing to go toe-to-toe? Are we willing to react in such a way to show him that we are a superpower? We have the most formidable weapon at our disposal. The devil's already defeated. And he knows that when God is on our side, we are unbeatable. I'm tired of the devil winning, aren't you? I'm tired of him hurting the people that I'm closest to. I'm tired of him claiming all these casualties. He's done enough damage, and I'm sick of it. The only way that we're going to get stronger and defeat him is for you to be sick of it too. But you just showing up here at church rather unconcerned and apathetic doesn't mean anything. In fact, he's still winning. Do you believe the devil can win even though you're at church? Do you believe you can forsake the assembly even when you're sitting in the pew? Absolutely you can. It's not enough for you to be a warm body in the pew. You've got to leave here changed. You've got to leave here stronger and be willing to battle the devil around every corner. And until you're ready to do that, you're not going to win. And we're not going to win as a whole. We've got to be resilient. We've got to be ready to put on the full armor of God and to take a stand and say, you know what, I'm tired of you winning. You want to prowl around here, that's fine, but you're going to get your head lopped off. Story is told of an Arab man who was sleeping in a tent. He left his camel outside, and it was getting really cold at night in the desert, and so the camel stuck his head in and said, can I just put my legs in to get a little warm? And the Arab man says, sure. A few minutes go by, and the camel wakes the man up again and says, how about I just stick my head in? I need to get a little warmer. The man says, okay. And this goes on several times during the night until finally the Arab man wakes up and the camel's in there with him. And there's not enough room. And the Arab man says, there's not enough room for both of us in here. And the camel suggests that he maybe go outside and sleep. And you know, the devil works the same way. You let him get a foot in, and before long, it's going to be everything. And you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of things. Don't even crack the door. Stand and fight. Be ready to put on the full armor of God. Be ready to be that spiritual warrior that God is calling you to be, and tell the devil no more. Now, before you grab your songbook, listen. Maybe you're sitting here this morning and you're defeated. Maybe you're tired of being defeated and you don't know where to turn. Let us pray with you. Let us help you. And maybe you've come to the realization that you've been serving the wrong master. As I've said over and over again, we all serve a master, whether it be sin, the devil, or Jesus Christ. And maybe you're ready to serve Jesus Christ and you want to put on Christ in baptism this morning, then I encourage you to do so. But folks, listen, time is fleeting. You don't know how much longer you have left. It's time to make a decision. It's time to stand and fight. Don't go and meet the Lord unprepared because you decided to do nothing. Come now as we stand and as we sing.